Hi, I'm California probate attorney Scott Grossman. In this video, I'm going to be answering the question whether a spouse automatically inherits from their deceased spouse. And what you're going to learn during the course of this video is there's actually three parts to this answer. There are times where a surviving spouse does automatically inherit. There are times where the surviving spouse can inherit, and there are also situations in which the surviving spouse won't inherit. It's a very common misconception that in California, a surviving spouse automatically inherits from their deceased spouse. That's just not the way the law works. But let's start with where the spouse does automatically inherit, and then we'll go into the exceptions to that rule. There are two situations in which a spouse will automatically inherit. The first of those is where the spouses hold property in joint tenancy. So a very common example of this is where spouses buy real estate together and they take title as joint tenants with right of survivorship. When the first spouse dies, the surviving spouse automatically becomes the owner of the entire property. The second situation in which a surviving spouse automatically survives is where that spouse is the designated beneficiary of an account or a life insurance policy. So what that means is the account will have been opened in the name of the spouse who's passed away, and as part of titling the account, it's the surviving spouse who is designated as the beneficiary of the account. Simply by filling in a form that's supplied either to a financial institution or a life insurance company, the surviving spouse gets ownership of the account or the policy. Now let's move on to the exceptions to when a surviving spouse automatically inherits. A surviving spouse can inherit when they are named as a beneficiary of a will or a trust. Now, most people hear that and they wonder, why isn't that labeled as automatic? Well, the reason for that is nearly always things will go according to plan. Now, there's a little bit of work to be done, but under a will or under a trust, ultimately, whatever has been left to the surviving spouse is going to be given to them, so they will inherit. But it doesn't always work that way. There's sometimes litigation within families. If there's a will contest or a trust contest, particularly if the children who are contesting it have a good reason to think that there was some kind of monkey business that led to the creation of that will or trust, then either the will or the trust may be defeated, or there may be a compromise along the way that results in the surviving spouse getting some of what they expected, but not all of it. Our final situation is where a surviving spouse won't inherit. If the deceased spouse had separate property, and this most often occurs in blended families, and that deceased spouse either created a trust they funded with their separate property, or they created a will that identifies their separate property, and either the trust or the will says that that property is going to someone other than the surviving spouse, then the surviving spouse is not going to inherit. Now, like all rules, there are always exceptions. So even if you have a blended family and there's separate property that's involved, there are always situations in which the deceased spouse had the separate property but did not create any kind of estate plan. There's no trust and there's no will. If that's the situation, someone's going to have to open up probate, and typically that's the surviving spouse. Well, under that scenario, the surviving spouse is able to make a claim to a portion of the separate property that's been left. And I just want to note, so you're clear on this, if there's community property that's involved, then the surviving spouse can actually make a claim to all of the community property. So while it is possible that a surviving spouse could come away with nothing, make sure that you've actually done the analysis to make sure that there isn't something that can be claimed by the surviving spouse. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, and you're ready to start your case, then please give us a call or fill out the contact form on our website. If you'd like even more information about the California probate process, then please take a look at our probate playlist right here on our YouTube channel.